The new arrival, the outpost, floated above the red sands of Threxen 9. Quiet and forgotten by most of the galaxy, it was a place for research, not war, and certainly not drama. But that all changed when the human arrived. His name was Marcus Hawley, a systems engineer from Earth, sent by the Galactic Exchange Program to assist with malfunctioning power cores. He stepped out of the shuttle with a heavy bag on his back, sunglasses on his face, and a strange smile that made some aliens whisper. He was taller than most, his muscles tight under a thin black uniform, and his skin looked like polished copper under the alien sun. Liari stood hidden behind a cargo crate, her soft green skin glowing faintly. She was part of the maintenance team, barely noticed by others. She had never seen a human before, not in real life. Only in Hala's stories and forbidden vids passed around late at night in the dormitories. The humans were said to be warm-blooded, strange in behavior, and physically fascinating. Liari didn't know what fascinating meant in that context, but the way others giggled made her wonder. Her curiosity flared the moment she laid eyes on Marcus. Something about the way he walked, confident but relaxed, stirred a feeling she didn't understand. Over the next few days, Marcus worked mostly alone, fixing broken reactors and rewiring ancient panels. He was polite but quiet, always saying thank you, even when nobody expected it. He would hum strange Earth songs while working, and sometimes laugh at his own tools when they didn't cooperate. He didn't treat the aliens like servants or strangers, just like co-workers. Liari watched from the corners, always pretending to clean or check valves nearby, but in truth, she was studying him. One evening, Marcus headed toward the shower units near Section C. Carrying nothing but a towel, Liari followed at a distance, heartbeat loud in her long ears. She knew what she was doing was wrong, but she couldn't stop herself. Her species didn't have the same ideas about privacy, and curiosity often ruled their actions. Still, she knew humans were more sensitive about being watched. That only made the risk more thrilling. There was a maintenance vent above the shower corridor. Liari had crawled through those ducts before, usually to fix leaky vapor lines. Now she climbed inside silently, her fingers trembling as she reached the upper grate. Steam clouded the room. Below, swirling like smoke in the pale lights, she saw Marcus pull his shirt off, then his pants, then step into the spray. His body was like the sculptures carved from stone in the old temples of her world, strong, lean, and warm-looking. She pressed her fingers to her mouth, unsure what she was feeling but unable to look away. Her eyes followed every movement, how he scrubbed his hair, how the water glided over his skin. She tilted her head, mesmerized by the difference in anatomy, by the way his muscles moved when he breathed. Then he stopped. Marcus turned slowly, eyes narrowing. He had heard something. He looked up toward the vent. Liari gasped, pulling back. But too late. The vent cover came loose and she slipped, falling from the duct like a clumsy feather. She landed hard on the floor with a thud. Tail curling in shame, Marcus rushed forward, towel barely holding as he crouched beside her. "Whoa! Are you okay?" he asked, voice full of shock but not anger. Liari's hands covered her face, her voice a broken whisper. I didn't mean. I saw steam, I thought." "Leak, maintenance," she stammered. Marcus tilted his head, his wet hair dripping as he looked at her trembling body. He didn't shout, didn't scold. Instead, he reached down and offered his hand. Liari blinked, stunned by his kindness. "You're not hurt, right?" he asked again, this time softer. She nodded slowly, unable to meet his eyes. Marcus helped her stand, his body warm even in the cool air of the corridor. He didn't pull away quickly, and Liari noticed the way his fingers lingered on her arm. Just a second longer than needed, she finally mumbled, "I'm sorry," and turned to run down the hallway. But his voice followed her, low and amused. "Next time, just knock," he said, and she disappeared around the corner, face burning. That night, Liari lay in her bunk, staring at the ceiling. Her mind raced, not with guilt, but with questions. Why hadn't he been angry? Why had he smiled? Why had his touch felt like fire? And why did she already want to see him again? He saw her watching the next morning. Marcus acted like nothing had happened. He strolled into the repair bay, humming an old Earth song. Sleeves rolled up, and grease already on his hands, but Liari avoided him, hiding behind stacked supply crates and pretending to sort tools that didn't need sorting. Her cheeks still glowed faintly green, the color of shame and panic on her species. She kept replaying the moment she fell from the vent, how close she had landed to his feet, how warm his hand had felt on her arm, and worst of all, how he hadn't looked disgusted. He had looked surprised, amused, even gentle. Liari didn't know what to make of it. She expected to be reported to command, punished, maybe even transferred to another post. But no alarm came. No reprimand arrived, just Marcus, working nearby like nothing was strange. Every so often, he would glance toward the crates and grin slightly. And every time he did, her ears twitched with nervous energy. By midday, she couldn't take it anymore. She gathered the courage to step into the hallway and make her way to the human quarters. She carried a fruit basket, 3 glinting crimson orbs from her home planet, and one delicate blue blossom tucked beside them. It was an old way of showing apology on her world. Her hands trembled the whole way there. She reached Marcus's door and hesitated. Her finger hovered above the chime button. Then she pressed it. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Marcus sitting cross-legged on the floor, reading a data pad. He looked up, blinking once, then smiled warmly. "Hey, duct girl," he said playfully, standing up. Liari nearly dropped the basket. "I come to say." "Sorry," she muttered, holding out the basket like a shield. Marcus took it carefully, his eyes scanning the fruit and flower with genuine surprise. "This is for me?" he asked, then softened. "You didn't have to." Liari's tail curled nervously around one leg, and she nodded quickly. "I do bad thing," she said, voice low. "I look when I should not look." Marcus raised an eyebrow, setting the basket down. He gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing near the door, stiff and unsure. "I'm not mad," he said simply, "but I am curious. Why did you watch me?" Liari's breath caught, her large violet eyes darting away. After a long silence, she whispered, "I want to see if story true." "What story?" he asked, now clearly intrigued. Liari swallowed hard. "That human body is very warm, very strange." Marcus chuckled, running a hand through his hair. "Well, I guess we are strange, depending on who's watching," he said, voice light but kind. Then he leaned slightly closer. "But next time, maybe ask first." Liari's eyes snapped up, wide and embarrassed. "There is no next time," she blurted. "I promise." Marcus tilted his head, amused by her panic. "Relax," he said. "I'm not offended, just surprised. That's all." She didn't know how to reply. She turned to leave but paused, glancing back at him with a quiet voice. "You not angry? Not hate me?" Marcus shook his head. "No, I don't hate you, Liari." That was the first time he said her name, soft, respectful, almost like it mattered to him. Her heart skipped, something inside her tightening like a pulled string. Then she nodded once and stepped out, letting the door close behind her. But the strange warmth didn't go away. Not from her chest, not from her cheeks, not from her fingertips where he had brushed her hand. She knew now that she had crossed a line. But she also knew something else. He hadn't pushed her away. He had looked into her eyes and smiled, and that confused her more than anything. Back in her bunk that night, she lay staring at the ceiling again, not from shame this time, but from something that made her tail twitch against the blanket. She wondered what else about the stories might be true, and she wondered if she really wanted there to be a next time. The apology that got awkward. The outpost cafeteria was almost empty during the third work cycle. Most of the alien staff preferred their own meal times in their own sections. But Marcus liked to eat when it was quiet. He would sit by the big observation window, chewing on synthetic protein bars and staring out at the distant gas clouds. He found peace there until today. A soft thump broke his moment of calm. He looked up and nearly dropped his drink. Liari was standing in front of his table, holding a wrapped container with both hands. Her eyes flicked left and right like she wanted to run away before she said anything. But she didn't run. Instead, she placed the container down and mumbled, "For you." Marcus blinked, then smiled. "You brought me food?" Liari nodded, then quickly added, "Not poison." He laughed, nearly choking on his own surprise. "I wasn't thinking poison, but thanks for clearing that up," he said as he opened the container. Inside was a soft, steaming alien bread, folded and stuffed with bright, earthy spices and slices of glowing green fruit. The scent was warm and oddly sweet. He looked at her impressed. "You made this?" Liari nodded again. "It's home recipe, very old. I want to say thank you." Marcus took a bite and his eyebrows rose. "This is amazing," he said with his mouth full. "You didn't have to do this." Liari sat down slowly across from him, fingers wringing her scarf. "I want to explain," she said, her voice low and shaky. "I not try to be bad, I hear stories since child." Marcus leaned forward, genuinely interested now. "What kind of stories?" Liari's cheeks flushed again, a deeper green this time. She looked away. "About humans, about heat, emotions, skin, touch." He tilted his head, curious. "Like myths or weird romance stuff?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, but also science." There was an awkward silence. Then Liari added, "I want to understand why your species makes others feel strange." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Strange how?" Liari searched for the right words, tapping her fingers on the table. "Like, when near you, body gets warm, ears ring, tail shakes," she admitted. Marcus tried not to smile, but he couldn't help it. "So basically humans make you nervous." She nodded, then said, "But also safe." That word hung in the air between them, heavier than the others. Safe. Marcus put his snack down, suddenly more serious. "I'm glad you feel safe, Liari," he said gently. "I don't want to scare you or confuse you." "You don't," she said quickly. "You are very soft." He laughed. "I think the word you're looking for is kind." She thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, but also soft." Marcus stretched back in his seat, arms behind his head. "So, no more spying?" Liari winced. "No. More spying." He gave her a half grin. "But you can ask questions if you're curious." "I don't mind." Her eyes lit up for a second. "Really?" He nodded. "As long as they're not too personal." Liari tilted her head, her voice suddenly bold. "What does your chest feel like when someone touches it?" Marcus froze, choking on his last bite. She panicked. "Too personal?" He coughed, then nodded, still laughing. "Yeah, maybe start with something easier." She looked down, embarrassed again. "Sorry, no, it's okay," he said, still smiling. "Just caught me off guard." She smiled too, this time without fear. It was small, crooked, and uncertain, but real. As they finished the meal, Marcus realized something. Liari wasn't just curious about his body, she was trying to connect, to understand, to bridge the strange gap between species, and he respected that more than she knew. When she stood up to leave, she bowed slightly, a gesture from her culture. Marcus stood too, mimicking her motion with a grin. "I'll bring dessert next time," he said. Liari paused, looked over her shoulder, and said, "I hope you bring questions too." He watched her walk away, tail swaying gently, and for the first time, he felt something stir in him, not just amusement, but something warmer, something he hadn't felt since he left Earth. A connection, small but growing, and it all started with a stolen glance through a vent. Asterisk touch of curiosity. The cold came without warning. A sudden solar flare erupted near Threxin 9, forcing the outpost to switch into emergency mode. Power cells flickered, and heating units dropped across all non-essential sections. Marcus had seen worse during deep space runs, but this time it wasn't equipment he was worried about. It was Liari. Her species wasn't built for sudden cold. Their thin skin absorbed ambient warmth from the environment, and without that heat, they could fall into shock. When the lights dimmed and alarms started ringing, Marcus dropped his tools and ran, not to the command deck, not to the mainframe, but to Section B. Where Liari's room was, the hallway felt like ice, and his boots echoed fast against the floor. He slammed his hand on her door panel, but there was no answer. "Liari!" he shouted, pounding harder, still no sound. He overrode the lock and burst in. She was on the floor, curled in a ball, her skin a pale, flickering green. Her fingers twitched, her breath shallow and weak. Without thinking, Marcus dropped to his knees, scooped her up, and pulled her into his arms. Her body was like holding a fading flame, so delicate, so cold. Her eyes fluttered open, barely recognizing him. "Too cold," she whispered, her voice cracking like ice. "Don't worry, I've got you," Marcus muttered, already moving toward his quarters. The corridors were dark now, backup systems flickering faintly overhead. His room had emergency thermal blankets and backup heat coils. Not much, but enough. He kicked the door open with his foot and laid her down on the bed. Then he climbed in beside her without hesitation, wrapping the heavy blankets over both of them. Liari tried to speak, but her teeth chattered. Marcus pressed closer, chest to chest, arms around her like a barrier against the cold. "Just breathe," he said softly. "Let me help." Their legs tangled under the blankets, her tail curling weakly around his calf. It wasn't meant to be intimate, it was survival. But even survival has its moments. As minutes passed, color slowly returned to her cheeks. Her eyes stopped flickering, and her breathing grew steady. Then, gently, her hand moved, pressing against his chest. Not with fear but curiosity. "You feel strong," she whispered, voice still hoarse. Marcus didn't move. "I lift a lot of toolboxes." She smiled slightly, fingers tracing along his collarbone. "Warm," she murmured. "Stories say true." He laughed quietly. "Glad I could confirm the rumors." She looked up, eyes wide and unblinking. "Do humans need this kind of warmth too?" Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, we do, just not usually like this." Liari blinked slowly, her hand resting on his shoulder now. "I like this," she said, voice calm. "You are soft, but not weak." That line hit him harder than he expected. He'd been called many things: strong, tough, stubborn, but never soft in a good way. From her, it felt different. It felt real. Silence filled the room, broken only by the quiet hum of the heating coils restarting. The emergency had passed. The lights glowed back to life. But neither of them moved. They stayed there, wrapped together. Not out of necessity anymore, but something more uncertain, more intentional. Marcus gently brushed her hair away from her forehead. "Next time the heaters go out," he said softly. "I'm charging rent," Liari giggled, the sound like music wrapped in warmth. "Then I pay with food again," she replied. "Or stories," he nodded. "I like both." Then her voice turned quiet again, serious. "I was scared when I couldn't move, but you came." Marcus looked into her eyes. "Of course I did." She rested her head against his chest. "No one ever comes for me first." And that moment, simple, silent, and human, hung heavier than anything else that day. Not because of the cold, not because of danger, but because of what it revealed. Two people from different worlds, sharing warmth they both needed. Not just body heat, but something deeper. Rumors and reactions. The outpost never slept. Even when the lights dimmed and corridors emptied, someone was always watching. And in places where silence lived, whispers grew louder, especially after someone saw Marcus carrying Liari in his arms. During the power failure, especially when they didn't return to their rooms that night. The first rumor said he had kissed her to wake her up. The second claimed she had curled into his bed like it belonged to her. By the time the third shift arrived, someone had filed a report, anonymous, urgent and full of vague accusations, cross-species contact, possible misconduct, emotional compromise. It didn't matter if any of it was true. The outpost buzzed like static under every word spoken behind closed doors. Liari felt it first, eyes lingering too long in the mess hall. Conversations that stopped when she entered. Even her work assignments changed, moved away from Marcus, away from anything important. She didn't understand why until she overheard two senior engineers whispering. "She's using her charm, those eyes," one said. "Poor human doesn't stand a chance." The words cut deeper than she expected. She had never thought of herself as dangerous, never wanted attention. But now the coldness in others wasn't from a power failure, it was judgment. And Marcus had no idea. He found out 2 days later when command summoned him for a formal inquiry. The room was plain, just a steel table, a cold chair, and 2 alien officers with unreadable faces. Marcus sat upright, confused but calm. "We received concerns regarding your interactions with alien staff," one officer said. "Specifically with Technician Liari." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "What kind of concerns?" The officer's tone didn't change. Physical proximity, emotional entanglement, sharing private quarters during off-duty hours. Marcus leaned forward. "She was freezing to death. What did you expect me to do, leave her?" The silence that followed was heavy. "We must consider appearances," the second officer said. "This facility must remain professional," Marcus scoffed. "So being decent is unprofessional now?" The first officer frowned. "Your behavior could be seen as suggestive." Marcus stood slowly, his voice low and steady. "If protecting someone makes me suspicious, then maybe you should review your protocols, not me." Outside the hearing room, Liari waited, heart pounding in her chest. She had heard whispers. But now it was real. He was being blamed because of her. When Marcus stepped out, their eyes met. She tried to speak, but he raised his hand and smiled. "They're not kicking me out," he said calmly. "Just giving me a friendly warning. Whatever that means." She looked down, ashamed. "I caused trouble." He shook his head. "No, others caused trouble. You just needed help." "But I make them talk," she whispered. "I make you get summoned." Marcus leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Let them talk." She blinked, confused. "Why?" He smiled. "Because I know what really happened, and so do you." For a long moment, neither moved. Then Liari spoke quietly. "They say I use my eyes." Marcus tilted his head. "You do," he said, teasing. "You've got dangerous eyes." She looked horrified, until he added, "They're kind and curious. And stronger than any cold I've felt." Liari laughed, covering her mouth in surprise. "You joke in middle of chaos," she said. He grinned. "It's how we survive." That night, Liari didn't avoid him. She sat beside him during meal break, let their arms brush when they walked, and though whispers still floated behind them, they didn't sting anymore, because now they had something stronger than gossip. Trust, and a strange quiet bond no rumor could ruin. The secret room. The storm outside the outpost had passed, but inside, another storm had begun to stir. Not of danger, but of feelings that neither Marcus nor Liari had the words for. They saw each other daily now, exchanged small smiles and shared longer silences, and one evening, Liari approached him with something in her hand, a small copper key. "Follow me," she said without explaining. Marcus didn't ask why, he just followed. They passed through unused corridors and flickering lights, sections of the outpost where even the cleaning drones no longer bothered to go. Liari moved quickly, her tail swaying behind her. She finally stopped at a sealed panel near the old storage wing. The lock was manual, long forgotten by most. She inserted the key and turned it with a soft click. The door creaked open like it hadn't moved in years. The room inside was small, dusty, and hidden from all sensors. Old crates lined the walls, and soft glowstones illuminated the corners. But what caught Marcus's eye were the items neatly arranged on a small shelf. Human artifacts. Some broken, some faded, but all clearly treasured. A cracked photo of Earth's moon, a dried Terran flower pressed into glass, and at the center a children's book written in English, with corners chewed by time. Marcus stepped inside, slowly turning in a circle. "Where did you get these?" Liari closed the door behind them, sealing out the hum of the outpost. When I was little, my father worked here, she said softly. He helped during the first Earth exchange. Before the program ended, she walked to the shelf and picked up the book, brushing dust from the cover. He gave me this, she said. Said humans were strange but full of heart. Marcus took the book from her hands, flipping through the pages with wonder. This is one of my favorites, he whispered. I haven't seen it since I was a kid, Liari smiled. I read it many times. Even when I didn't understand the words, she looked up at him, eyes shimmering. You remind me of those stories. He raised an eyebrow. You mean I look like a cartoon lion? She laughed, shaking her head. No, you make me feel safe and curious at same time. Marcus walked slowly toward the center of the room. Why show me this now? He asked, his voice more serious. Liari hesitated, then said, because others see scandal, whispers, shame. But I see something different when I'm with you. He nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling in. I see it too, he said, and I don't want to hide it. Before she could answer, the lights above them flickered again. Then the magnetic locks triggered with a loud snap. They rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. System lockdown, an old safety measure when the air filters detected anomaly in abandoned areas. We're sealed in, Marcus muttered, checking his wrist panel. 6 hours minimum before reset. Liari didn't panic. She sat down on one of the crates and patted the spot beside her. Marcus sat down, brushing dust off his sleeve. Well, he said, got any more secrets to share? She turned toward him, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, she said, but you must not laugh. He smiled gently. Promise. She looked into his eyes, nervous but determined. I want to see again, she said, but not from vent this time. Marcus blinked, then smiled, understanding instantly. He took her hand in his without speaking, letting silence carry the meaning. There, in the soft glow of forgotten things, they sat close, no barriers, no spying, no shame. Only warmth, and the promise of something real. When curiosity turns to connection, the day of Marcus's departure came too fast. The shuttle that would take him back to Earth hovered silently above the outpost, casting a long shadow across the landing bay. Crew members gathered to say their brief goodbyes. Some waved out of duty, others barely looked up from their tasks. But Liari stood alone by the bay doors, her eyes fixed on the human who had changed everything for her. Marcus wore his old utility jacket, patched and familiar. His duffel bag rested beside him, but his focus was only on her. She hadn't spoken much since the night in the secret room. Words felt too heavy, and silence between them had said enough. But now, with engines rumbling and time slipping, she forced her feet to move. She reached him just as the crew signaled final boarding. Neither of them spoke right away. Marcus smiled, soft and real. Came to watch me leave? Liari shook her head slowly. Came to ask something. He waited, patient, eyes never leaving hers. She pulled a small object from her pocket, a stone, smooth and striped with red and gold. It shimmered faintly in the light. This is from my childhood den, she said, placing it into his palm. My people keep them for warmth when we are far from home. Marcus closed his fingers around the stone. His voice was quiet. Then I'll carry it wherever I go. She looked down, hiding the tremble in her voice. You made this place feel like story again, she said. You made me feel like not broken. He stepped closer, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. You made me feel like I belonged, he said. Even out here, in the middle of nowhere. Her ears twitched, her eyes brimming with something between sorrow and hope. I never said goodbye to anyone before, she whispered, but I want to say it right. Marcus leaned forward, resting his forehead gently against hers. Then don't say goodbye, he said. Say until next time. She nodded, blinking back tears. Until next time, she repeated. The crew called his name one last time, and Marcus stepped toward the shuttle ramp. He paused halfway, looked back, and gave her a short salute. She smiled and mirrored the gesture. Her fingers pressed to her temple. Then the hatch closed, and the engines roared to life. Liari stood at the edge of the platform long after the ship vanished into the clouds, but her heart didn't feel empty. It felt full with something new, something growing, a connection not born from curiosity alone, but from trust, courage, and quiet moments shared between species who dared to understand one another. Weeks passed, and Liari still visited the secret room. She dusted the shelves, read the book again, and left little notes beside the human items, and one day, the CUM system chirped. A private transmission from Earth, no name, no file, just 3 words. "Knock next time," she laughed softly, her tail flicking behind her as she whispered back to the screen, "I will."